Unmute myself. Yes, I think I unmuted myself. Hello and welcome to Explain Everything. My name is Bart. Here's Scuba with me.
Hello, everyone.
And together we have a session today for you that we think might be quite inspirational. We want to provide you with some illustrations, how you can use Whiteboard not for simple things, but for visualizing your book notes in a way that is sometimes beyond expectations of what you can do with a whiteboard.
Oh yeah, usual book notes don't really include so many things that you could add them by incorporating Explain Everything. So yeah, you're for a treat today.
Yes. So let us know if we go too far with, I don't know, visual complexity or techniques that we're going to cover. At any time, you can ask us questions. We will respond. That's the live session for you. So you can interact with us using chat, posting questions to Kuba and me, and we will respond, explaining everything, I guess.
Oh yes, that's in the name.
Yeah. So today, let me show you briefly what we're going to cover, as it's also in visual format. We like visual formats a lot. So I can kind of zoom out and show you what we prepared for you. I'll just remove those things here. Okay. So we'll go through a short introduction that is text-based, and we'll speak about graphic organizers and what they are and what they can do for your book notes. Then we're going to cover examples of the book notes of various kinds. And when speaking about those examples, we're going to refer to some notes that I gathered on the left side of the screen, notes on layout. And we're going to speak about the difference between constrained format, like the paper format, and unconstrained whiteboard canvas that we're using today. After that, we're going to show you process of creating book notes. And I prepared 3 examples of different kind. I guess the webinar should take us around 45 minutes, so we're open for any questions as they come, so we can, explain everything as I mentioned. So
before we start, so you all these things that Bart's talking about, these are pretty complex, but you can also simplify them and see how they can work not only for you but for your students if you are a teacher, right? So you can just boil it down to very simple stuff, and then prepare an assignment to prepare a book note, kind of like that. But Bart's gonna go really in depth right now. So just remember, if you want to ask like a question regarding how something can be simplified, feel free to do that.
Right, exactly. Because eventually what you can arrive at asking students to prepare book notes is something like this, like you see on the screen. So this is a kind of a sort of a whiteboard where we see a book together with some notes on 3 areas covered within the book, with short information from each one of the chapters related to those concepts. And this information can be provided by a student by typing it in, by writing with a pen, or by copying content from, let's say, electronic version of the book onto the canvas of the whiteboard. So this is like an easy illustration of what you can expect as a visualized book notes.
Yeah.
But we'll go deeper and show you the crazy stuff, the more complex stuff, but yet I think quite interesting to share. So let's begin with the form. What we're speaking here about is something that we call graphic organizers. Graphic organizers for book notes. It's kind of like a mental aid that supports you in terms of comprehension of what is in the text of the book. So if you think of the book, it is a form that is chaptered, that you have a chapter division and you have like the text blocks from page to page. So it's not really structured according to one's needs. If someone wants to, let's say, take pieces of the material and emphasize some elements of it. And you know how you do the notes. Most probably you just highlight the things of interest or put them to the side of the paper or note them down on a separate piece of paper or perhaps even whiteboard. What we're going to show you is how to use interactive whiteboard, as explained everything, in a process of remaking the format, going out of the constraints of the text and chapter division only into more of a, let's say, a visual realm in order to put an emphasis, visual emphasis of the elements that are important for you or for your students. This is something that should allow you to increase comprehension, understanding, and also increase possibility for retaining the materials learned in the book and use them later more efficiently. And of course, we need to suggest that there are also countless ways you can put your material from the book in a visual form. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It is what works for the person that is creating it, because there's this element of, authenticity in creating such organized, visually organized way of expressing ideas from the books or the things that we've learned. It speaks a lot about, the taste, the way someone sees the relations between information. So there are no better or good ways to do it.
Yeah. Whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Absolutely. So when you think about pre-digital way of doing graphical organizers, we saw countless examples of how those were done. They were always constrained by the format, because you were constrained by the bounds of paper, but also by the process of creating such a graphic organizer. Well, using pen and paper, well, there's not much flexibility in putting the materials on the paper, because if you do a mistake, well, it's hard to redo the mistake. And with digital tools, it's quite easy. That's why you can fill the form with the graphic, with the layout, in order to arrive at something that actually works best as a graphic organizer. That's why I think whiteboards are unique in attempt to arrive at a perfect form, at a perfect visual expression of the core essence of the book, don't you think?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, definitely. Given how much stuff you can put in, and just not only just the contents, the text, but also you can increase like the visual value of that piece by adding your own graphical representations of things that well, how do you say that? That kind of reminds you of something, right? So
yes.
If there's an image that you particularly connect to a certain idea, you can do that, and it will automatically link this idea to the certain part of the text, right?
Absolutely. And we think of this as a tool that is useful and helpful in process of teaching and increasing retention of what we've learning. So it's usually the tool that should be introduced by a teacher, by an example, by a given form, let's say. But once the class is familiar with, let's say, whiteboard and wants to explore different possibilities, the teacher, that's my opinion, should withdraw from like, putting too many constraints on the task, allowing students' expression to flourish. So the process of exploration, visual exploration of layout and connections between elements should actually help the learning process. As you can combine within a single image a lot of patterns, a lot of information, and the structure, visual structure that I want to show you using the examples that we provided here. So let me go briefly through those examples here to show you what is possible. So we'll begin with concepts from the book, and those concepts are expressed within those pieces of handwritten material, as you see. This is a way to do it. This is actually a good example of something that was produced on a paper, but then digitalized and put onto the canvas of a whiteboard for like putting it all visually together. So the notes here could be like in a different format, but they were arranged visually using the whiteboard. The different way to arrange the similar notes we can see here. So those notes were used within the mind mapping application and arranged like this, and then exported to the whiteboard for presentation. I guess that's the interesting example where you have a mix here of the notes, also done by hand, with labels created in Explain Everything. These are actually text labels. And you can also see that those notes from this book here are divided in columns. So we have a column division here, which allows for this three portions of the poster. We can call it a book poster. That was the end result of this task of putting it together. But of course, those constraints here are like, meaningless in a world of whiteboards, because you can imagine centered graphical organizers like this one. This is a set of essays in a single book, 25 essays coming from remarkable scientists that are in this book. And as you see here, this graphical organizer kind of summarizes few of them. So we have a book in the middle, and the notes from each of those essays, 6 of those essays, in a form of like a mind map. What is interesting here is that this way of putting material together was not restricted only to the quotes coming from those essays. They were also tied, built together using pictures of those scientists, and even, as you see, quotes here, elements of Wikipedia that speak about their backgrounds, or listing books that they created, as you see here, for example. So in a process of exploring the content of the book, like in this essay coming from Judea Pearl, you see that there are notes attributed to the single idea coming from, let's say, this book here. And there are related materials for later reading that come out of, that are like a result of deep exploration of the content of this essay, which is, I think, remarkable thing you can do with Explain Everything, where you can mix materials together to compose kind of like a more complex picture than just a text, right? So when you think about references, text references to related materials in books, they're just like a list of titles and publishers and dates, which are not painting a full picture here. Here we can like represent those books with actual colors, making it more visual in the end. So these are the basic examples, but of course, those maps can be larger. So here we have a map that is bounded in format, the same format as the iPad screen. That's why it looks okay on the screen of an iPad, where you have column division of the notes, 6, 7 columns, together with notes and different books that were referenced in the material from this book, and the graphs together on the single poster, I would say. And those quotes here are actually quotes that were important for the person that was reading the book to memorize or just keep together for later, for reference. Also including logos of the companies that the text was about, or statistics that were used in the book. This is actually a brilliant book. Have you read it?
No. I know about Stephen King, but I haven't read it yet. No.
The other idea, how to organize elements on the canvas, and we'll show you in a second how to do that. It's not just showing, but also suggesting how to perform and create those elements on the unconstrained canvas of Explain Everything. But here, I want to show you what is possible in terms of creating a structure of the text. So here you see the chapters. So when reading the map, when reading such poster, you can dive into specific chapter, like chapter 6, how superminds can help solve your problems. And by that, you can have pretty much good understanding where you are in terms of the book. So this is reflecting chapter by chapter division, but it's supported with visuals, as you see again, those related books or graphics that were not present in the book, yet were organized for the purpose of putting this material and making it more visual later. And process of finding additional materials like this picture here is actually something we call exploration that is stimulated with the use of such a tool. So reading text, that's not the full story. Finding additional resources that expand knowledge on the subject is something that should be thought of as a component of the process of learning the book contents. This is, I would call, a way to deeper understand the content of the book. Because there are studies that shows that deeper processing of text, deeper processing of information, going beyond the text, improves the retention, improves the comprehension. So when you as a teacher, if you would want to initiate this process, the task for a student would be, okay, take the notes from the book, but try to mix it with additional materials that illustrate it. So in this example, if the author is speaking about the roots of the word robots, that means that student actually has to do the task of going to Wikipedia or other source and finding related information like this picture from this Czech play from 1920s, where the word robot was used for the first time. Do you know that it's actually a Czech word?
Really?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So that's our neighbors, south neighbors of Poland.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that's actually interesting. So the other interesting aspect can be observed or can be simulated here. So here we see the notes from the book on the image, on the digital image. And those notes can be, let me show you something that is quite interesting. I'll just set the rotation for this. So as you see, those notes can be like made more interesting if you have moving elements to it. So here I just put this background image into, well, let's call it slow rotation. This little motion here makes this image a bit more interesting. Of course, it does not add to the clarity what we see here on this image. It's just aesthetical aspect of what is possible.
Yeah.
When using Whiteboard, I would not expect rotating elements in the background. We're showing you that those things, those nice touches are possible when you use explain everything as the tool for the job.
Right. They can now, not only the content can be interesting, but also you can make them visually appealing, right? Like this is quite insane, to be honest, and it's very, very, very thought out, right? And how you made that work, that requires the knowledge of some tips and tricks and explain everything. Well, hopefully we'll be able to cover some of them today.
Yes, most certainly. 3 more examples, and we'll show you tips and tricks how to do it. So when doing those book posters, graphically organized book posters, you can think of color coding them. So this is a different example where we still use the column division here, but each chapter is color coded. And those colors are taken from the logo of the book that you see here. So when building the map, we can use this this is a very useful feature of setting custom colors like this and defining what kind of color you could use later on. Like now I just took this green color from the logo, or I can take this main color from the logo, as you see here, with no problem. I can just take the colors from the background image in order to use them for when creating those text objects here. And maybe one more example. So this is a graphic organizer that does not have paper format. This is the list of columns that are kind of structured in a way to express the notes, list the notes from each of the chapters. So we have a name of the part of the book, then chapters, and a summary, and then quotes. And those quotes take the length of the column, and they are sometimes divided by images. So for example, here, if author is writing about this prehistoric computer, Antikythera mechanism from the Greece, we can actually put an image here, and this was done during the process of creation of this book poster, and an image came from the museum resources, digital resources of the museum, that shows the replica of this mechanism. So later in the process of reading and reusing this material, it's quite easy to come back to those notes if we see those visual cues like image here and there. And it's actually a question of personal preference, how many visual elements there are in the map, as of this one, in order to draw attention to specific contents. So we can think of calling something out with, as here, bold text, but also using a different color of the text, using different background for the text, like this part was quite important, and that's why different background was used for this text element. The possibilities are countless. It's more of a question of what kind of tools students would want to use.
Or you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because these are mainly like personal notes, right? You most probably going to use it just for you. But since you're using so much of the stuff that you don't usually share, but that's what they are for, right? That's for your own personal use mostly.
Yes.
So helping like students create those will also increase their understanding, can increase their understanding of how they structure information that they find valuable, like you do it, and it's universal regardless of your age.
Exactly. So the purpose of creating those notes, as you mentioned, Kuba, that was for increasing retention. So my goal when creating those was to have a pleasure of coming back to the material and relearning things that I've learned in the past. Because as you know, memory is quite flexible. You seem to forget things. So I found myself forgetting books that I read like 2 years ago, and I had to read it again, which is like, I would not call it a waste of time, or rather finding those interesting elements in the book is time consuming. That's why taking those elements from the books that are interesting and worth remembering later was the goal behind those maps. It was about immediacy in accessing those elements that could be reused later. But of course, the task of creating those visual maps can be defined by the teacher according to what we want to practice. It could be a practice aimed at retention. It could be a practice aimed at taking the main concepts, let's say from a chapter, and illustrating those concepts. It can be a way to teach storytelling related to the content of the book. It all depends on what you want to achieve. But those specific maps were done for the purpose of recalling information learned from the books.
Right, usually just the comprehension of the text, right?
Yes.
That's what it's all about for younger students. And it's a great exercise for everyone, actually. Oh, it's one of the better advices you can get. So just right after you read something, you just take notes and then get back. And so that's why you retain the information better, because you kind of get those sticking points where you know that you've read about something, you just go back to it and create a note and then check the note and so on and so forth. And then in this process, you actually verify if that what you read was true and how how you think about it is true, and that creates engagement, right? And that's why it will yield a better effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I also think that reorganizing the content, well, the content in the book is organized by the author, but reorganizing the book to suit your needs in recalling those things, in reusing those things, is actually quite important. So think about changing the structure from this as we begin chapter division into something that works for you is actually a quite important aspect of doing those notes. So before we get into showing you how to do those notes, I just want to call to your attention some ground rules for the layout. So when you think of a paper format, most of you most probably is aware of the fact that those books or notebooks are modeled based on the grids. And there's quite a bit of knowledge about how those grids, like here, 4:4 or 5:5, how those grids are created and what is the foundation of those grids. This is not something we're going to cover today. I just want to show you a few general rules and where you can read more. Well, of course, the proportions are something where a lot of knowledge about the proportions exists already in the materials and the books. What I recommend is to read this one. This is a classic. It is a classic because of the principles of the design, but also it is a classic in terms of thinking about the purpose behind the content. And of course, this is a book about the form of the book. Here we're speaking about Whiteboard. I haven't seen yet a book about the form of the content that is related to the whiteboard. Yeah, so this is the best we can use for now, as the rules that are expressed in this book are actually something you've seen and that was applied to those maps and to those visual graphic organizers that I showed you, because of the use of the grids. And we have here some illustrations about the layout. I don't think we want to go deep into how to build the grids. Suffice to say, we're using 6 to 10 grids for those posters that I showed you. The theory says 12 is ideal, but any multiply of 3 and 4 would work for you. We also use the text objects, mainly we use the text objects. So there are rules for the margins and borders for those text objects. We don't want to also go too deep into that. We want to show you more of the practical skills today, but what we suggest you to do, if you like to read more about the science and the practice behind putting grids in place, please refer to the materials that we suggested here. So notes, just to show you the practical side of this. So the notes taken by hand in the notebook can look like this. And of course, as you see here, everything still is based on the grid layout with those spaces. Even the margins, even the sizes of the margins are not random. So those little marks here are actually kind of like markers where not to, that divides the layout of the page. And this is how you do it on paper. But with Whiteboard, you can go crazy, building as many columns as you want, and take them like to the extreme, right? In fact, I don't believe making a layout that is not constrained is working well for the content. Rather, you can create anything that is like, you know, fast using the size of the canvas that is actually unlimited. I can zoom out and zoom in again just to show you the full picture. But what I suggest is to find a template that would work for the purpose of creating book notes. And for me, this template that was used within those notes was based on the columns, and go with this template as the first step you can do. The template, to create a template, is easy as creating, let's say, a division, and that those divisions you can do using simple objects. Like now I'm using an objects tool that is here on our Explain Everything tools, on our Explain Everything toolbar. So I created a single object, and what you can do if you want to use grids, you can duplicate those objects and find the layout that works for you. So for example, here I'm going to create 3 columns layout. Because I used my pen to position those columns, I can select those columns and using inspector arrange them so they, let's say, align to the top. And by this, have quite proportional layout of 3 columns. And this is the simplest way you can arrange the template. And of course, these are just columns. So what you would want to do is to add text objects, and text objects can be created using a text tool here. And the text tool allows you to select a size of a text. So for now, I'm just going to create a text object that is within the range of the first column. And here, because the background is black, I want to use white color of the text and perhaps make the text a bit smaller. This is the text. So as you see here, I can reposition my text object. So when I tap it, when it's activated, it shows the bounds of this text object, and the column beneath, as you see, there's a margin between the text and the column underneath. So if we now duplicate this text, it will look like this. So if you copy from the digital version of the book, let's say quote or entire fragment, and put it within this text object, it will look nice within this column. So that's the basic thing you can do in order to create a template. I would say create 3 columns. And use text objects like here in order to have them within those columns. Save it as a project and provide this to your students in order to create initial visual book poster that will be filled with the quotes coming from the books.
Right, and you can use use it in a couple of ways. So you can either prepare a text box like Bart did with all the preset colors and so on and so forth, or you can use a placeholder object in order to insert the text right there.
Oh,
so,
right. Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I think we could later on go through the how you can create your own template. Actually, that would be useful. The placeholder objects are in the Add Media menu. You can find them on the bottom. The placeholder menu, yeah. Mm-hmm. So you can just select text box from the menu, and then reposition that, resize it, and it will look like a actual placeholder. So it will have the same properties, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can also think about using placeholder to put, let's say, images or files, because you can create those as well, like this.
Oh, we didn't turn on taps and gestures.
Sorry. I can. Okay, now you'll see me tapping on the screen. With those circles show where my finger goes, so you can see my taps and gestures. So if you create a placeholder and you tap it, it will automatically go to this menu where you can choose from where you want to put a document or file. And the document that you'll put to the canvas will be constrained by the bounds of this placeholder.
Right. It will not rescale. So it will, depending on the size of the document or image, or it will just adjust automatically. So
exactly. So if you use those simple techniques that we show you here, this is very, very basic. If you think of the possibilities that you have in a whiteboard, you can actually create quite complex posters like this. And I can show you this by examples. I have 3 examples where I captured the process of creating those graphic organizers. So let me show you those as I have the videos here. They will play, and I'll tell you what's happening here on the screen. So here you have notes coming from a paper notebook, as you see here. And those notes are going to be reorganized in order to create a book poster. So as you see now, I'm playing that in Explain Everything as I recorded the entire process of cutting out elements of those scanned pages so they can be, as you see, there are text labels added to them. So they were grouped together with text labels and now are going to be rearranged in order to fit the space that I created for them. So it's basically an example of cutting out existing elements and rearranging them with, let's say, a bit of addition of text labels in order to provide some more information. So as you see, the structure of a notebook is not visible now because now the notes have a structure of this column-based graphic organizer. How about this example? Is it something easy to replicate?
You mean the one with the cutting out?
Yeah.
I think it's easy. It takes a little bit of work. I mean, if you have a lot of handwritten notes, then yeah, it can take you quite a while in order to scan this thing, and I'll take a picture and then bring in to explain everything. Yeah, but it's very easy. I mean, you just cut. So you will not, well, since it's a picture, that's not really a problem. But in this case, where Bart edits a text box, then you will not be able to edit the content of the copied object. So just remember that.
Exactly, but it works great with graphics. So any element of the graphics can be cut out and replicated that way. So let's say here I have just a picture of this graphic organizer, and I just want to have this cover of the book, right? This cover here. I can use the cutout tool just to replicate it. And as you see now, it is working as a separate object. Well, I was not precise, so you can see here elements of this rotating stroke behind, but I can use the razor and erase those, or this line here as well. So this is more of tools that you would expect from graphic programs, right? Graphic editing programs, yet they exist within Explain Everything to make your life easier when you want to improve the visuals, replicate something quickly. So that's one way you can think of arranging notes on a whiteboard that come from a scanned materials. The other way is illustrated here. So what you see here is a video of how this graphic poster is created out of quotes that you see on the right screen of the right side of the screen. So you see, when reading the book, elements were highlighted within, I used Kindle here, and they were then copied and pasted to the canvas of the whiteboard and rearranged to fit the needs. So as you see, this is a process of copying text and adding them to the text box that was already available for me when doing this graphical organizer. Sounds quite easy, right? You mark the text first, those elements that interest you, you want to retain them on the map, you just copy them to the layout that was prepared and Explain Everything.
Yeah, that sounds useful. I mean, that was one of the examples that caught my attention when you showed them in the first time you showed those notes. So yeah, that's pretty neat. So especially given the multitasking window of an iPad, or I think you can do that on Android too, right?
Yeah.
So you just divide your screen into two windows and then just copy and paste into Explain Everything and back and forth. So this is pretty neat. That's what Explain Everything allows you to do.
Yeah. And you just take the notes and add them to your whiteboard. I forgot about one letter. Just like that. And of course, the application that you use on the right side can differ. It's up to you what you use for your digital version of the book. And the third example is actually can show you how you can expand on the things that you learn when reading. So for example, here, I was, again, creating notes from the book, but I used different graphical programs in order to make fancy labels that were then put to the canvas of the whiteboard. So as you see here, I add this history of the image, as that was a chapter that I was focusing on, and I copied the template that I used before, and then went through the notes, building those columns, filling them with text. But also when doing that, I was expanding my understanding by looking for additional materials that you'll see soon here. So I just created a few labels on this video. And this is the, I'm playing this not according to the speed of creation, of course. This is like fast forward, but I want to show you just those elements that are the most interesting. So here I'm exploring some books using Amazon, looking for some concepts. I'm saving the graphics related to those books so I can put them to the canvas of explain everything later when writing about a concept. As you see here, I used bold in order to take out some elements to make them more visible, standing out from the text, and illustrate those concepts with books that were referred in the text of the chapter. And by that, you can kind of better visualize information that is provided by the author. Here you'll see interesting example. I was looking for a better alignment of those elements so they don't take too much space. And this is something we spoke before, right? That you cannot do something like that on a paper. You're constrained because you cannot redo things. Here you can.
Yep, and you can use whatever means you can, possible. Well, that is not the right expression, but yeah, the whatever internet or whatever you can take a picture of a certain thing inside of a book. You don't have to find it on the internet, right? But
absolutely.
Yeah, in this example, yeah, you just go and find a quote and find an image of and just insert it. Like that.
Like that, yes.
Yeah, and since it's personal, then you don't really have to worry about copyrights because you're not going to share it anyway.
Yes.
And yeah, this is pretty cool. So we've got a couple of questions. Is there anything else you want to show? Yeah. Okay. So why don't we? I think it would be great to show how to create a template and explain everything because I don't think we've covered that at all yet in our webinar series.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could go and just create a new project. So because once you get familiar with how to set up your template, how to set up your columns and so on and so forth, you might want to just create a project that will serve you so you don't have to do that again and again. So in order to do that, you just create a new project. And so, but before we do, no, let's try and go back to the home screen. Hopefully this will. All right. So once you press new, you see that there are a couple of options, right? So you can start with blank canvas, you can start with template or files. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna select blank canvas, but then the thing that we create, the project that we create, will go into templates. So then you'll just select template, and then start from a template that's already covers or already have all the elements that you need. So we'll start with blank canvas. And so we had a question from Sven. Hi, Sven. Great
Hello.
to see you. What's the purpose of placeholders? Just a visual reminder to add something later. So since we are creating a template, that's a great time to talk more about placeholders. So usually you want to create a placeholder to create a template so that the person that you're sending the template to or you have an easier way of inserting stuff onto your canvas. So say you are creating a like the template that Bart's actually creating right now. So he, instead of using, the text box is a kind of a placeholder in itself. So, that might not be a greatest example, but say you want to let your students or someone else know that you want this particular type of a file in this particular place. So
let it be an image.
Right. And then you just insert a placeholder there.
Like this.
And then you can just send this as a template or as a project to them, and they will know what you kind of expect in that place. It will make you make the work faster instead of you having to go through all those steps, adding an image, repositioning it, blah, 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 right? So that's why placeholders are quite useful when sending projects or saving them as a template. So what we want to do now is we want to create a template. So now this is a project that Bart's created. We have 3 columns. There's an image on the top, text placeholder. So in order to save your project as a template, you simply select the project settings, and then you just select save as template.
Like this.
Yep. And there we go. What a save.
What a save.
So
there's also a second way you can do it. You can save this project as a regular project and then distribute it to your students.
Yeah.
This will also work as a template. But now, since we saved this as a template, what we can do now is when creating a new project, we can go to templates, and we'll find our template just here. Template for your book project. The name is truncated, but still, this is our template that we created here.
And right now we can just start with that template, and it saves you a lot of time.
Exactly.
Hence what a save. So that's not a good joke, but yeah, we have to change that. So a placeholder, because there's another question.
Yeah.
What is a placeholder? So a placeholder allows you to immediately go to add media menu or immediately insert a text box in this case without having to use the toolbar. So say if Bart now wants to add an image in that particular place where the placeholder is, he just needs to select the hand tool and tap on that placeholder, and this will open the menu where you can select the picture instead of having to go into the menu.
Know where the menu is.
Yeah.
And even in this example, I'm using presenters mode where I don't have the button to add media. There is no button, but yet I can use my placeholder, just tap it, and it will open the possibility for me to add pictures. So let's say I want to add a picture now. I'll take, let's say this brain here. Yeah, I have this brain.
Right, so that's how it works. It just, it's a shortcut for the particular type of media that you want to insert onto the canvas in a predefined space. So that's what that placeholder is. Speaking of adding media, there was a question coming from Regan. Can you, where is it? Could you add a video of a robot? Speaking of robots also. So yes. Yeah. So we can do that here, right? So speaking of, if you use placeholders, you can also create a placeholder for a
placeholder video.
I think that's a new video. It's an existing image video. It's the same thing, right?
Existing image video. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now, since this targets the photo roll of yours, of your device, you can tap on it.
So let's say,
and select a video that will play inside of your book notes.
Like this. So let's say I take,
this one.
Oh yeah.
There we go. Right. So as you can see, you will probably have to reposition it a little bit. So because it takes in this particular case, it took the height of the placeholder. So right. Let's lock scale. Right. Okay. In order to fit that particular, but that's the usual thing in terms of because we don't want to crop that for you. It's because you would have less control over what's the content in there, especially in cases of videos. Yeah. So yes, you can add a video of a robot. We didn't have a video of a robot, but a cat is fine too, I guess.
That's the footage from our last webinar on GIF creation. Yeah, so when I'm trying to create a template for the book notes, I usually use the text object and set the font here. Let's say this one. So that's the label, just to standardize the fonts a little bit. That's the text. And if you do that, and you, let's say, reuse this text label all around your project, you will always have the same font with the size and the style. So that's also the way you can try to standardize the text across different columns.
Right. There was something also I wanted to mention. Okay, there's another question. Can you import other graphic organizers or others have created online and enter data to them? Okay, well, yes.
Yeah, okay. So the way you can do this, is that you can ask others. So there are a few ways to do it. I would do it in a way that I would ask others, let's say my students, to share projects with me. So I can then take the projects and merge them into one project that I can, let's say, show using a projector in the classroom. So for that, what you would need to do, let's say I'll go to my projects here. Here I have different books with different notes. And I would want to merge those projects together to arrive at a single project. I'll just show you this using two projects. I'll take this project here and I'll drop it to, let's say, that project here. So you see this plus sign. It will show you that something will happen if I drop this project. Once I drop it, there's an option to merge projects. So that's how you can create one project. So that's going to be combined graphic organizers. And I merge projects. No, those are quite large. That's why it takes a bit longer than usually. And as you see, there's a new project, combined graphic organizers. If I go to that project, it contains slides from all of the projects that I used in the process.
Right, and answering your question, so yeah, if someone shares a template or a graphic organizer like that with you, you can edit the contents of those of such project, right? Say if Bart shares this project on Explain Drive and creates code that will allow you to download the project, which will we will not do that since they consist some of the artwork and
because
quotes.
Of the copyrights. Yes.
Yeah, but you can definitely do that if it's, you know.
So let's say this is a project that is not just a graphic. This is Explain Everything project, although I merged this with another one. This is still an Explain Everything project that consists of those objects. And as you can see, those are text objects. I can edit them if I like. So that's how you as a teacher can, let's say, suggest some changes or add new elements, maybe not black on black, just like that, and save that for later. So yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Yeah, so a template like that, we could share a template like that, right? The template that we created. Did we say that? Yeah, I think we did, right?
Let me see.
So that would be great to share, right? So you don't have to like start from zero.
That's the template.
Right. So once Bart shares this project, we can send the link to you, and then you can reuse that. So it doesn't have to doesn't have to include the data there or the text, right?
Text,
yeah. So the template is a great starting point. So yeah.
This is what I would suggest to start with when doing those lessons on graphically organizing concepts or doing book notes in a graphical way is to share the template as such and ask students to start from that. And then later, let them experiment to find their way to position materials, rearrange the concepts, link those together using the tools that are in experimental editing, starting from simple connections, maybe visually aligning.
Right. So like this is very rigid. You might want to just start with a very simple one without the constraints. These are great for like personal notes, like Bart loves them, right? This way. But the kids, usually when we see examples of such activities and assignments, usually they are not really structured. They are just free form.
Yes.
In terms of, book notes that younger students create. They are just, and it's also with the recording, it's a great way for a student to talk about the book notes and their thinking. Right, so they create a book note, they create a recording, they talk about those notes. Not only you get to know how this was created, but also what was the thinking behind it. Right, so this is share a template. Choose a book, share a template, create a short video about those notes that you've inserted, and then you'll learn more about how your students think.
Because ultimately, sharing templates should remove the fear of starting from a blank canvas like this one. What do you do, right? It should provide instructions for students to, let's say, follow your guidance. So there are, let's say, 3 chapters that you want students to express their thoughts or their understanding about the contents of those chapters. Doing those 3 columns would help. And you can also just do this. Take the eraser. And put this description of what you've learned from the chapter here, right? And that's chapter 1. Yeah, you can even sketch those suggestions, how you would want to see the results of the students' thinking in a graphical form, just for them to begin with something, not with an empty canvas, which can be, quite
thought-provoking.
I hope.
Yeah.
We hope.
Yeah. So that's how you can simplify those structures or use templates and then send them to your students. And
I have, just as a close note, 3 suggestions. Try to first define the goal behind the graphic organizer. Should it help you to understand, and therefore what do you expect from this visual illustration of the contents? Should it help you to come back to materials and recall them? Should it help you to make sense of something that is complicated? This should be defined at the very beginning. Then template, as we said, using those placeholders. You can template the grid, you can use those placeholders, but you can also structure the colors. So if you have those text objects and you set the colors for those text objects, they will be saved in the projects for students to use. And lastly, find a way to make it pleasing experience and try to make it in a way that students want to come back to the materials that they created, that they feel proud of, that they want to revisit in order to learn more, in order to explore more, because that's ultimately the idea behind it. You want to explore the edge of your knowledge about a subject.
Right.
And go beyond that edge.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess we've come to an end of this particular webinar. We'll be sharing, for those of you who haven't yet been on a webinar from Explain Everything, we're going to share a recording of that webinar with you once we post it. We'll send it to the email that you registered with. And next week, we have another webinar about integration with Google Classroom. So if you use a like G Suite or your Google Drive, Google Classroom, and so on and so forth, we'll show you how you can integrate the two to save time and, well, to make it easy actually to send templates like we shown today. Because that's the cool part about this. So yeah, that's the webinar next week, and we'll hope to see you there. So for now, thank you for coming, and we hope you enjoyed this, and we hope you have a great day, and see you on the next webinar. And thank you, Bart, for providing all those great examples.
And I hope you can share your examples once you successfully put Explain Everything to the practice. If you want to share your examples with us, please do so. We would be delighted to observe you using our tool for similar book notes with the classrooms.
Awesome, awesome. So, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask us either at connect@explaineverything.com about webinars and stuff we do, or if you have any questions about how the app works, support@explaineverything.com, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for coming. Hope you have a great day, and see you next time.
See you.